How's everybody doing? Very good, man. I'm so fired up to be here today. First thing I want to do before I get started my information is give the credit back to Mr. Michael Kane, Mr. Greg Provenzano, Mr. Robert Stefanowski, Tony Kupas, for giving us such an incredible opportunity here in 2015. Can we agree right now is probably the most exciting time to be in ACN, yes or no? And it's all because of what the founders have put in place, and all of us here today as leadership. You know, it's our responsibility to be successful, not just so we can get rich and so we can live in mansions and drive sick cars, but to really show people what's possible if you're willing to put your head down, get to work, and apply the skill set, mindset, and everything that ACN represents here at the opportunity. So one more time for the company, for the founders, and for each of you guys here today. So this is a leadership training. I love leadership training because we get to have what we call uncensored conversation. And my only goal today is not to change what you're doing, but maybe just to remind you on a couple of things that you are doing, but maybe you could do a little bit better. And so whenever I go to trainings, I remember I used to come to events like this after I had hit RVP, after I started having some success, and I would sit in a room almost with my arms crossed and my ego up to here, thinking like, oh, I already know this stuff. I can't really learn. I mean, I already know how to get a customer. I already know how to get a rep, you know. So I would sit there disengaged. And unfortunately, those are the things that were getting in the way of me having breakthroughs in my business. And so I heard Darren Hardy say at one of our conventions, 3 questions you must ask yourself when it comes to becoming better and stepping up your game as a leader. Don't ask yourself, do I know this information? The question is, am I doing what they're talking about? That's the first one. Am I really doing what they're talking about? The second question is, have I mastered this? Have I really mastered it? Because knowing but mastering, and mastering are 2 different things. Does that make sense? And then the third question he says is, do my results prove that I've mastered this information? You know, a lot of people here are what we call travel agents, not travel guides. What do I mean? You know the path, but you've never gone the path. A lot of us know how to pop an ETT. A lot of us know how to go out there, and technically, on paper, we know how to do this business. But the question we really got to ask ourselves is, are we really getting the results that would prove our knowledge base in this business? Does that make sense, guys? So I got started in ACN 10 years ago, and it was definitely not an easy process. It was a lot of growth, a lot of learning, and even to this day, I'm still going through new levels of learning and having breakthroughs all the time. And so one thing I'll share with you, when I first got in this business, I worked really, really hard for very little results. Can anybody relate to that? I felt like I had a bucket, and I was putting water in the bucket, but there was a hole at the bottom of the bucket, so everything I was putting in was coming out. I'd recruit people, they would quit. I'd get customers, they would cancel. I'd pop an ETT, they'd disappear. And I just felt like I was spinning my wheels over and over and over again, and the conversation started becoming negative internally. It was like, man, when is this ever going to work? Why? I'm putting in all this effort, I'm working hard, I'm doing all the things that I've been taught to do, but for some reason, nothing's sticking. I don't get it. And I started getting, you know, I guess I got into a situation where I became a victim of the business. I started becoming a victim of my environment, of my system. I started blaming everything. And it was this one little conversation that literally changed the entire approach in building this business. See, I'm naturally a shark. You're going to hear more about that later on. A shark is a person who's aggressive, a go-getter, who's competitive, who's all about the work. Can we agree on that? So sometimes we may miss out on things such as like how to be a human being sometimes. You guys know what I'm talking about? How to build a relationship. You know what I mean? Like, oh, what? You're not qualified? I don't know you. Does that make sense, right? Yeah. So those were some of the problems that I had early in my game. And so I remember a gentleman saying that, you know, your business is all about your daily method of operation. He says most people are active but not productive. So the purpose of every day is to add customers to your team and IBOs to your team. And I took that literally. So all I would do is focus on getting customers, focus on getting on IBOs. That was all I cared about. But ultimately, I was having that situation where I'd put the business in and nothing was sticking. I was getting some results, but it wasn't sticking. It wasn't until I took a step back. It wasn't until I got frustrated with my results. I said, well, I'm good at getting reps. I'm good at getting customers, but there's something missing here. In fact, I didn't learn this lesson until after I hit RVP. I popped 4 TCs. Like, if you can pop, can we agree it's easy to go TC? I mean, if you look at the compensation plan, look at the opportunity, it's easier than ever before to go out there, enroll people, and get them customers, yes or no? Of course. I was good. I popped my 4 TCs, boom, I'm an RVP, but I wasn't really an RVP. I had what you call a shell of a TC. I had pins, not producers. I had titles, not leaders. I had renters, not owners. Does that make sense? So anybody can go out there and pop RVP and pop TC, and they'll get it, and then they'll lose it, and then they have to do it again and again and again. And I got frustrated because my business fell apart. And then I heard this quote from one of my mentors. The quote said, listen, don't just build production. You got to what? Build leadership. And I was thinking to myself, well, I thought I was building leadership by popping people, ETT. I thought I was building leadership by being in the trenches, grinding all the time. I thought I was building leadership. No, yeah, you kind of are, but you kind of aren't. Yes, you are leading by example, but it's all about your attention to why it is you're doing what you're doing. Are you getting customers and reps to get a cab? Or are you getting customers and reps because you're trying to show someone the process, teach them the process, so eventually they can duplicate the process? See, it got to the point where I didn't let my team do anything. I'd be in there doing everything. I'm like, I'm going to show up to the PBRs. I'm going to close the apps. I'm going to do all the ones. I'm going to get all the customers. Because my mindset was, if it is to be, it's up to who? Me. And it's true. But there's also a time frame where you got to let people step up. Does that make sense? You can't sit there and baby your 17-year-old kid like they're 6. You can't sit there, oh, do you need me to change your diaper? No, Mom, I'm good, right? There's a time where your kids grow up into teenagers and teenagers become adults. And the problem that I had was I didn't let my people go, so I wasn't developing leaders. I was just developing a bunch of pins. Does that make sense so far? And so we're not here just to produce. Yes, do we want to produce? Yes or no? But how much more could we produce if we had 10 of us? How much more could we produce if this room was your downline right now? What would that look like? Does that make sense? But you are where you are in your business, and you are only going to build what you are in this business. You'll only attract who you are in this business. So if you're a person who's not thinking in terms of building leaders, you'll never have a team of what? Leaders. ACN, I've learned to respect the founders on so many levels because they have one of the most powerful leadership teams in all of network marketing. Does that make sense? See, the quality of a leader is determined by the quantity of leaders they produce. And I believe ACN, the founders, have done such an incredible job. If you look at this room, this represents their reflection of their leadership. Does that make sense? We got to start thinking like the founders and not thinking about our paychecks, not just thinking about getting cabs, not just thinking about the production charts, but thinking beyond that and thinking in terms of raising up powerful and effective leaders. How can we now start empowering other people to take ownership so they start thinking bigger than a cab, bigger than a customer, bigger than a bonus, but now thinking about how they're going to be able to elevate the next generation of leadership in this opportunity. And so what really builds momentum, what really builds leadership is momentum. A lot of new and excited IBOs following the system and getting results. I believe that leadership begins, right, as a brand new IBO getting started. People, based on their results, based on what they're seeing, are going to make a decision to commit or quit. If someone doesn't see results within their first 30 days, can we agree a lot of people might make a decision to back off? How many of you guys have had people who were fired up for a week and then disappeared the week after? And so we understand that part of keeping people in the environment till they can grow in their belief in the system and grow in their belief in the opportunity is they got to see some short-term results. See, you show them short-term results, that's going to keep them around a little longer. And the longer they're in the environment, the roots of belief will get deeper. And so the first step is when they get involved, the key is to get them to ETT so they can start seeing some type of result. And so momentum, the way I like to define it, is a lot of new and excited people, not one excited person, a lot of new and excited people that are following what? The system. This is the key, because we're going to create an ETT factory. Does that make sense? And factory what? It's all about system. It's all about an assembly line. It's all about a process that's being duplicated day in and day out. And so you have a lot of new and excited people that are following what? The system. To do what? Get results. I'm not interested in just recruiting people to recruit them. My obligation, if I was a personal trainer, if you hired me to train you on how to get fit, and you hired me, and 30 days later you're 10 pounds fatter, can we agree I'm a bad leader, yes or no? People hire a personal trainer to get what result? To get in shape. Even though people are technically not hiring you here at ACN, but when they end up in your organization, indirectly, they are choosing you as a mentor to follow, and your objective is to help them become what? Successful. Help them do what? Get results. And so what are the results we're talking about? The 3 Ps, production, promotions, and payouts. Say it with me, production, promotions, payouts. And so important because here's what some of us have mastered how to produce. We can go and have a month do 30, 40, 50 reps, and then the following month we do 10, 15. Some of us may have a good quarter, and then we have a bad rest of the year. I mean, here's what I'll tell you. This is a true conversation. Can we have a truth conversation, yes or no? This is the annual convention. Look at who's going to be all 4 quarters President's Club. Those are the people who've mastered the 3 Ps. Oh, but I got cut off. That's not an excuse. Because the producers get cut off and they go build it again and again and again. It's what they, what? Do. 3 Ps, production, promotions, and payouts. See, some people can get lucky, recruit one guy, boom, they blow up in their first quarter, second quarter President's Club. But then when that leader really hits TC, now the true leader steps up, and now they're the one who's taking over. You got to have a mindset of you don't just have one team blowing up. You're not just lucky in this business. You don't have one-itis. You're not a one-hit wonder. You are a master. You are a professional. A professional, no matter where they go, no matter what the market is, they're going to produce what? Momentum. Some people have this mindset. I just moved to Chicago. And they're like, oh, maybe we should move to Chicago too so we can blow up. No, you're not going to blow up. Because if you couldn't blow up in your own backyard, you're not going to blow up in Chicago. Does that make sense? Because how you do anything is how you're going to do what? Everything. See, it's not the market, it's not the comp plan, it's not the products, because you know what? In Florida, we didn't have energy. And we were still number one in the United States every single month. Oh, but you know, it's hard to get people to flip to a dish. That's our number one product. Oh, it's hard to get people on Flash. Man, calm down with that. You're weak. It's time to develop a backbone. And guess what? You already have one, so you don't have to spend money on it. Does that make sense? Ladies and gentlemen, you gotta be ferocious. Not like aggressively nasty, but I mean ferocious about your opportunity. You gotta have that mindset that you're gonna do whatever it takes, beast mode. Does that make sense, guys? 3 Ps, good you can produce, but the next level of production, it's like adding. Good you can add. Good you can drive forward, but if you can't drive reverse and if you can't turn, you're stuck. Does that make sense? Good you can produce, but if you can't promote people, the production dies. Hole in the bucket effect. Does that make sense? Negative momentum. You have a bunch of people signed up, lose money, looking at you, this thing didn't work. You're my personal trainer and I'm fat because of you. Does that make sense? You are building your track record based on the success that you're developing with your new people. So production is just the first piece. Second piece is promotions, getting people promoted from QTT to ETT, because QTT moves the comp plan. Can we agree? You can't pop an ETT without a what? Without a what? So if it takes you too long to promote a QTT, you're now prolonging the result of an ETT, and the longer it takes to promote the ETT, guess what? You have a slower start of the momentum. Your stories are going to be slower, the slower payouts are going to happen. So understand that we control the volume of results. We control the volume of momentum based on the speed at which we produce and then promote, produce and then promote, produce and then promote, and by default, payouts. So you don't focus on the money. The money will come. If you focus on production and promoting those people quick, the payouts will always be there, yes or no? See, the problem with some of us is we're limiting our production promotions to the comp plan. We're like, well, I just want to do 20 reps this month. So you're focusing on the paycheck, and as a result, you're working backwards, and you're not creating that momentum. Momentum's always growing or it's always dying. But if you focus on the 3 Ps, the way I'm explaining it to you, you're always going to be on fire. Your team's going to be focused on what? The right things. The right things. Production, not paychecks. Paychecks come as a result of what? Production. So in a new market or in your market, you want to create momentum. I'm talking about a momentum that will never stop. I'm not talking about a 1 month or 1 quarter momentum or a 1 year momentum. I'm talking about a momentum like a Simon Aboud momentum, like a Patrick Mazer momentum, like a Jamal Uddin momentum, like a Jennifer and Darren Dowd momentum, like a Coalition International momentum. You guys know what I'm talking about when I say momentum, yes or no? I'm talking about the teams who compete, they dominate all the time. They're not winning for a season, they're winning forever. That's who I look at, and what they're doing is what I'm showing you right here, the building a fire of momentum. See, here's how some of us build our momentum in this business. We get a match. I recruited somebody, but it took too long to get him qualified, took too long to help him hit ETT, so you got that match, and what does the match do? Burns out. In fact, you don't let it go too soon, you burn your hand. Does that make sense? Then some of you guys, okay, great, I got a fire, and then you get a piece of wood, and you're like, it didn't work. Your pace is too slow. So you just got to dump all the firewood together. Now, I don't build fires. I don't know anything about fires. But I can imagine if I wanted to build a big fire, I need a lot of what? Wood. Does that make sense? The more wood, the bigger the fire, the longer the fire what? Burns. Does that make sense? Some of you guys popping ETT back in 1995 and still talking about it. You're like, yeah, I popped the quick start bonus. I remember that guy, yeah. It was the best moment of my career. A 72-hour ETT. Man, you're telling that story at every leadership, at every convention. The guy's not even around, but you're still telling that story. The good old days. Can you imagine me hanging out by a fire that's not even, it already burned out, but I'm still here? There's no fire there, but there was. There was. We got to live in the present. Yesterday's home runs don't win today's games. Does that make sense, guys? See, we're not looking for leaders. We're looking for what we call now leaders. Say that with me, now leaders. Meaning you're doing it when? Now. Not back then. I'm talking about when? Right now. You know why I work so hard? Because I want to be relevant to my team. See, my team is in the trenches. They know what's going on in the game, yes or no? If I'm not in the trenches and I'm talking to my team and I'm not in the trenches, they're going to know Max is not in the trenches. See, I was hanging out with somebody a couple days ago, and they're like younger than me, a couple years, And for the very first time, I realized how, irrelevant I am when it comes to the regular world. She was like, oh, you ever heard of this rapper? Listen to this song. I'm like, this is rap? She was like, oh yeah, you watch this TV show? I'm like, what show? What channel's that? And she was like, no, we don't even watch TV. It's on this online thing. I realized right there and then how irrelevant and out of touch I've been with the world. I couldn't even have a conversation with this individual. I was sitting there like, man, I must be like the biggest loser because what I thought was cool is no longer cool because obviously we're in a different space in a different generation. Does that make sense? But that's what happens to leaders in this business. When you're not in the trenches grinding, you talk to your team, they look at you like, where are you coming from? You are a one-hit wonder. You're an oldie. It's a goodie, but you're still an oldie. You can't coach me right now on what do I do on social media to recruit people. You can't coach me right now on what's going on when people will go to this company. You can't coach me because if you're not in the game, you don't know what's happening. Does that make sense? And so what it boils down to is you got to get off your high horse and get in the trenches. I stole this from Mr. Burt. Thank you, Mr. Burt. They don't need bosses. We don't need bosses. That's what you have in corporate America. You do this, you go do that. Do this, do that. We need leaders who get dirty, who go from the stage down into the trenches. They take their eye off the trophies and get back into the trenches. They forget their pin and realize, you know what? I got to go in there with my people and show them how it's done. No more. See, there's too many people, and maybe I'm getting a little fired up. I apologize. Sorry, not sorry. Because it's happened to me. I got more interested in speaking to my team on a Friday, feeling important, than actually going in there doing meetings for them. I was more interested in saying the best quotes on Facebook than actually going there and qualifying my reps with my new ETTs I'm trying to develop. Guys, what people need more in this business more than ever before is more leaders in the trenches working with them, not bosses that are just edified, talking about what they got and where they live. Who cares what you got? Show me how to get what you got. Don't just tell me, show me. Get in there and show me what it takes to do 5, 10 meetings in a day. Does that make sense? I mean, look, there's other companies out there that will promote a lifestyle. You know what? I think that real authentic people are not interested in that stuff. Oh, that's great. That's a nice airplane. That's a nice car. Oh, how many cars did you mention? Oh, great. But that doesn't matter. You know what matters? When you build a relationship by going in with those people. Because your team will remember what you did with them. They'll remember the sacrifices you made. They'll remember the distance you went to help them be successful. You know why it's so important? Because then you create a culture of doing, not talking. A culture of leading, not delegating. You create a culture where people go to war for one another. People say, well, how do you create a team that doesn't quit? Because I never quit on them. See, when you don't get into trenches, you're quitting on them. No, I ain't gonna do that. How many? Oh, 2 people? I'm not doing that. Okay? Greg says it all the time. Mr. Provenzano. If you're too big to do small things, you're too small to receive the what? And it's hard to do. You know how hard it is to go phase 1 cold market in a new city? In Chicago, when you're wearing pink pants and a blue jacket? It's humbling. You know, I was like, man, I worked 10 years to be an SVP so I can wear this crazy stuff, live in my penthouse, live on the beach, live a great life, do whatever I want to go do, and now I got to go to Chicago. I can't even wear what I want to wear. I can't drive what I want to drive because it's always snowing. There is no beach. The beach is actually a lake, and they call it a beach. It's ridiculous. I'm like, I grinded for 10 years so I could do, now I'm back. It's humbling. But you know what? It's the most important thing that's ever happened in my life because it got me back to what matters most in this business. And sometimes we can forget that. And so here's the bottom line. So, okay, we got to pop ETTs because that's the first step of leadership. Does that make sense, guys? The first step of leadership is popping ETTs. And I want to show you, if I can find a slide here real quick. There it is. We're going to spend some time on this. So we're going to work it backwards. Every single person in this room, before you hit TC and above, you got qualified. Yes or no? When did you get your first check? Was it before ETT or after ETT? Ask yourself this question. Would you still be here today if you didn't hit ETT in 30 days or less? Let me take a poll. How many of us here hit ETT within 30 days? Okay, put your hands down. How many of you guys didn't? Did you guys see that? Did you guys just see the room? The majority of people who are here hit ETT in 30 days or less. Of course, there's exceptions to the rules, which is the other folks who put their hands up. But here's my mindset. If the majority of the ACN leadership, if the best of the best in ACN Global are here right now, and more than 80% raise their hand saying, I hit ETT in 30 days or less, can we agree there's a pattern there? Is there a pattern there? Now, just because you hit ETT doesn't mean you're going to be a leader, but can we agree if the majority of leaders here did it within 30 days, 80%, there's a pattern to be looked at, yes or no? So I build my business based on patterns. Call me crazy. I say it's obsessed with the game. But the pattern is if most leaders who become leaders hit ETT within 30 days or less, that means if I help most people go ETT in 30 days or less, I'm going to have a greater chance of increasing my likelihood of finding and developing and keeping what? Leaders. Does that make sense? And so I focus on the ETT factory because I know if I do it right, 80% of people who are going to do it more than likely will eventually evolve into a what? A leader. And so the first step is leadership. So you can't start developing that person as a leader until they do what? Hit ETT. And then, of course, people can't hit ETT until they do what? Go to an event, get some recruits, get qualified. But it all begins when they're born at a presentation. And so this death bridge is what we train our whole team on. I'm not going to teach you how to present, how to launch. You guys know those things. Here's more of a mindset, a mental process of how to bake a cake. Does that make sense? And part of baking a cake requires that you do more than just read the recipe. You got to actually do the recipe. Does that make sense? And so the first step of the death bridge is exposure. And I teach this to my people because I'm like, if you play this game right, you're going to win. 9 times out of 10, you're going to win. See, most people are going to quit in 30 days or less if they don't hit ETT. Now, that may not be a fact, right? But that's how we play the game. If people don't hit ETT in 30 days or less, you're going to do what? Quit. The definition of quitting here is falling into the black hole. Now, of course, there's some people, like I said, there's exceptions to the rules always, but that's how I play the game. So for the minute I show someone the business, they're exposed. I got 24 to 48 hours to get together with them and get them in action. Well, I want to launch them right away. If I don't launch somebody within 48 hours, they end up in a black hole. Why? Because in the beginning, their excitement is high, their fear is low. Every day that goes by, they lose 25% interest. 25% interest. And once their fear exceeds their excitement, they're donezo, finito, death hole. Does that make sense? And so the name of the game is how to keep the excitement high? Results. Show them proof. That's what builds the belief. Does that make sense? Showing them a nice car ain't going to do it. Does that make sense? Showing them that it's for real, you go in the trenches with them, doing means with them, that's what's going to do it. So they get exposed within 48 hours, we get them launched, and the launchers, well, here's what we do in the launch. The whole purpose in the launch is to take away the fear. Take away the fear. Because people are afraid of what their friends are going to think. They're afraid of not being able to sign people up. They're afraid of not getting results. They're afraid. Our job as mentors is to take the fear from here to bring it down to here and bring their belief up here. How? By holding their hand and doing it with them. By simply making the phone calls with them, making sure they get yeses. So you are there, kind of like training wheels on the bicycle to ensure they don't fall. Does that make sense? And when they start getting yeses on the phone, when they start seeing how simple it is to sign their services up, their excitement continues to increase and increase and increase. And so from that launch, if you do it right, you're going to lock them in for another 24 to 48 hours. And what happens after that launch? You want to get them results right away, which is what? A PBR, or getting them into an event of some kind. And my whole goal is to get them a rep right away, an IBO right away, because the minute they see someone wanting to do it on their team, that just makes it more believable for them that other people are going to want to do it too. Because no one believes anyone wants to do this. They're like, nah, my friends don't want to do this. I mean, they may not verbalize it, but deep down inside, they have this like almost a negativity about what they're doing. And they've signed up. Just because they signed up doesn't mean they're in yet. Does that make sense? They still don't believe. But the minute they see someone at their home meeting join, now they're like, I'm fired up. This is for real. I learned this from the Mazers, where if someone has a PBR and no one shows up, that's your fault. If someone has a PBR and no one gets involved, that's your fault. Some of us are trying to blame it on the new person. They don't know anything. That's like blaming your kid for, making a mess when they eat and they're like 3 years old. That's it. That's your fault. Does that make sense? And so when we start taking ownership of the results for the new IBO, all we're really doing is setting up to succeed, teaching them the proper way it's supposed to be done, right? We get in there with them. So my goal when I go to a PBR is close an app, get some customers, show them results, show them that their upline mentor has their back, show them their upline mentor is the real deal, show them their upline mentor knows how to do this business, that they can have belief and faith in their leadership because we will take them where they want to go. Not because we said it, not because we made a video, but because we are showing them in the trenches. Does that make sense? So they get that done. Boom, now their beliefs increasing. They're seeing some results. Now what do you want to do next? Get them to an event. So important. Because when you work with people, a lot of times they get too comfortable. How many of you guys have experienced that? The respect level and the comfort level kind of blends a little bit there, and it's hard to coach them and tell them what to do. Or you've been saying the same thing again and again, and it's not having any effect on them. And so what you got to do, here's what I realized, until they go to an event, people are going to operate from a place of motivation but not inspiration. Well, I'm motivated to do it because I want to hit ETT in 30 days and make my money back. I'm motivated to do it because I don't want to lose $500. That's motivation. External things motivating them. But once they go to an event, here's what happens. They see a bigger picture. They hear a different vision. They hear a different perspective. They see people just like them. They hear testimonials. Oh, yeah, I started ACN 3 days ago. Outside of ACN, I'm a teacher. I got involved because, I'm not making it up. I'm overworked and underpaid. I have 3 kids. I'm doing this to be able to provide them the very best life. I hit ETT. I got 3 IBOs and blah, 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 blah. And I love this business all because of the system. So if I'm that new person, I'm like, what? 3 days? Teacher? Are you kidding me? And then you hear another testimonial, I just got started in ACN a week ago. I'm 18 years old. I'm still in high school. I just follow the system. I have 10 IBOs on my team. I'm doing this to pay for college. What do you mean? High school? So now they're sitting there and they're being sold on the testimonials and they're looking, man, if these people can do, what's my excuse? Every excuse they have should be demolished after they hear from people like them having success in this business, and then they go from, oh man, I want to do it. No, I need to do this. From I need to do this, I will do this. From I will do this, I know I can do this, because now they're inspired from the testimonials. They see it, but now they really what? Believe it. And what happens? Their excitement gets brought to a new level. And again, it's all about energy. Bring that excitement up. And then they're going to do the final work that's needed to wrap up ETT. And what happens when someone goes ETT? When someone goes ETT, that's success. It's a celebration of success. Everyone wants to be rewarded for their accomplishments. They get paid when they go ETT. Do they not get paid if they go hit ETT? Yes or no? And that's why we got to work so hard to help them get those 15 points or 20 points so we can knock out that quick start bonus. They get that paycheck, and what does it do? It validates the system. It validates the instruction, everything you did with them, and now what? Now they have the belief that this is for real. They have the belief in you, their mentor. They have a belief in ACN. They have a belief in now their future, their vision of where they think they want to go. And from that position of ETT, now we can bring them into the environment and start cultivating their mindset, cultivating their skill set, cultivating, everything. So now they get sold out to becoming a full throttle leader with ACN. See, leadership begins at the ETT promotion. ETT promotion is your responsibility. So if you look at the bridge, there's a lot of holes at each step because people will fall into the black hole if you don't do this within the right time frame. Now, a lot of us here are doing these things, but the problem is you're doing it too slow. Or maybe you're doing it in the wrong order. One thing a lot of us do is we will sit there and start doing leadership development at the first meeting. We're sitting there and getting into the personality types. We're getting into closing tactics. We're like, let me teach you all the top secrets on how to, go get 100 customers, right? We got to make sure that we're simplifying the process. There is a sequence to success. And in this business, just like baking a cake, if you follow the step-by-step procedures of the recipe, you're going to have some good tasting cake. Does that make sense? If you follow the sequence of the procedures, exposure to launch to closing for results, to promoting an event, to popping an ETT, now you shift them into leadership. Now you're going to see a person that's going to get motivated and inspired and now take advantage of the culture. Now, what's the moral of the story of this? Once you do it correctly with somebody, because they know the process now, there's no more teaching. You don't teach momentum. You don't teach momentum. Tell me what the taste of chocolate tastes like. Describe the color green. Does that make sense? It's something you have to do what? Experience, to understand. Momentum is something you have to experience to do what? Understand. And so when you take this person, this process, let's say I have Chris as an example, I sit with them, he comes from the presentation to how I close him, to how I launch him, to how we do his PBR, to how I get him his first rep or 2 customers, whatever, promote the event, get him out there, boom, pop him ETT. He is now going through the process. He's going through the process. He's walking the path with me. And then when it comes to leadership development, here's what my leadership training is. My leadership training is reminding him on what I did to him. I'm like, hey, bro, do you remember how you came to a whole meeting? Oh, yeah. Well, that's what we do with people. Do you remember how I asked you the closing sequence questions? What did you like most? You want to make a little or a lot? Why? Great. How soon do you want to start making money so we can help you achieve that goal/need? Remember how I did that? Great. Well, that's exactly what we did. It's called closing. Do you remember how I launched you within 24 to 48? Oh, yeah. Remember how I had you write your why? Yeah. Remember how I explained ETT? Yeah. Remember how I made you make phone calls? Yeah. So now I'm teaching him, or not teaching, but reminding him of what he done already. So therefore, he's already, because he came through the culture, it's already within him. Does that make sense? That's how you teach it. That's how you teach the process and duplicate leadership. They go through it. And by going through it, now they can own it. Does that make sense, guys? And so then what happens? He begins to start doing the same thing with his people. He'll start taking ownership of his own death bridge, his ETT factory. And what if he now starts saying, well, I'm not going to wait for you to launch my people. I know I got to launch my people within 48 hours. Guess what? He's going to start doing it. Now I'm going to start getting results. He may have a higher death ratio at first, a lot of people falling off the bridge. But before you become good, you're going to have to be what? Bad. And so it's important that if we're doing it correctly with people, We let them start doing it too. Yes, we're going to do it with them. We're going to, in initial stages, go with them in this process. But the mindset needs to be, how many ETT factories do you have in your organization? When I was in Chicago, it was, I moved one of my guys over with me to start the market. And he had nothing going on at first, obviously, because he had to start from scratch. And so I started going out there, doing what I had to do, create some momentum. And he was side by side watching me pop ETTs in my new marketplace. Probably within like 30, 60 days, we popped like 3 ETLs, a whole bunch of business, whatever. Became the #1 team in that marketplace real quick. And then from that process here, here's what happened, right? Here's what happened. He started seeing what was going on, and he goes, great, now that he got momentum going, guess what he started doing? Same exact thing. Today, his team is #1. Today, his team has like over 200 IBOs in like 4.5 months. Because of this, guess what? Now he has 3 people in his group that are all separate legs that are doing what? Popping their own ETTs. They're all popping their own ETTs. So what's the moral of the story? See, your mindset isn't how many ETTs are you popping? Well, how many, what's going through your factory? What if you had 10 people doing the same thing every single week? Their only goal was to take someone from start to ETT. What if you had 10 people doing that? What if you had 20 people doing that? What if every single ETT in your organization had the mindset of popping ETTs, creating an ETT factory? And that was a conversation. How many people popping? How many people getting paid? Does that make sense? Would that be sick? So to give you a quick DMO on how to do this, track records to break records. Track records to break records. Some of us think that IBO is going to be able to figure it out on their own. No, they're not. Your IBO is like a 3-year-old. They got to be told what to do. Not just told, but shown. Does that make sense? So I signed somebody up. How many of us here wish they could have more focus with their schedule? How many of us wish they could learn how to be more productive with the time they put in the ACN? See, it's just like CrossFit. Have you guys ever done CrossFit before? I started doing CrossFit probably like a year ago. After I started talking to Jake Spencer and he got all ripped, I was like, dude, how you doing that? He goes, CrossFit, bro. I'm like, okay, cool, I'm gonna try it. And I'll tell you what, I get more done in the first 10 minutes of CrossFit than I used to do like in the whole entire week working out at the gym. And it's a short time frame, but the results are ridiculous, right? And so the problem with a lot of people is we put in time, but we're not putting, see, we're working the business, but you need to work while you're working. What do I mean by that? See, you're doing ACN, but you're not really doing the business. You're not doing things that what? Matter. And so if you start having a goal, like a sniper that has a target every moment, boom, you're going to be on point at all times. See, what's the goal? Momentum. What's the goal? What's the goal? What? Momentum. That's the goal. How do you create momentum? Popping ETTs. That's the definition of production, promotions, and payouts. You pop an ETT, you have the 3 P's embodied in that. Does that make sense? Right? So you want momentum, what do you got to do? Pop? Because that, by default, is production, promotions, and payouts. So you're popping ETTs, that creates momentum. So now, here's how I look at my schedule. The purpose of my schedule, yes, to get customers and IBOs, but to organize it. I organize it in the form of, how many ETTs am I popping? What do I need to do to pop ETTs? I'm giving you guys some information right now to teach you how to take a market from 0 to #1. Does that make sense? I'm going to teach you how to build a fire that's going to keep burning 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. See, if you create a culture of people focused on the right things, guess what? Everything will happen for you in this business. This business isn't hard if you're focused on all the right things, ladies and gentlemen. So here's what I mean. We call it a cap tracker. A long time ago, I saw an organization that had this, and it really changed our entire business. So let's say I sign up 3 people, Annie, Bobby, and Chris. So what my focus is obviously putting them on the bridge. This cap tracker represents what? The bridge. So if Annie's my IBO, she just signed up, I'm going to look at the QTT part. If there's no check mark where it says QTT, what's my conversation with Annie all about? We got to get you qualified. Why are we talking about fourth quarter if we're still in the first quarter? Does that make sense? See, you got to get people one focus at a time. Some of you guys are like, okay, we're gonna juggle. You give them 1 ball, you give them 2 balls, next thing you know, you're throwing all these balls at them, like, what do I focus on? See, but you give them one thing at a time. Boom, QTT. Until she's QTT, you're not talking about anything else. We gotta get you qualified. And guess what? If she's in your group, right, you're working with her, your agenda is gonna be built based on this. Okay, great, I gotta help Annie get qualified, so my goal today is to get Annie qualified. I need to do what? Then you fill in the blank. Your work is gonna be defined by the job that needs to get done based on your cap tracker. Let's say Bob. Bob's already qualified. Great. So what are we focusing on with him? We got to get you an IBO, bro. Some of us are like, we're going to get you to TC 98. No, forget that. Let's get you 1 first. Let's get you 1. Yeah, but I want to go knock out like all these energy accounts. I have an apartment building with like 15,000 people. Great. Let's get you an IBO first. I mean, you don't have to do that, guys. I'm letting you know, if you want to pop ETTs and have people really focus on duplicating that process, then this is what you got to do. Does that make sense? So they go and do what? So my conversation, hey, we got to get you an IBO. We want to help you position yourself for ETT. So what's my schedule going to consist of? Either relaunching, making sure he has a PBR booked. So his need is going to be scheduled in my planner. Does that make sense? So that's all this is. And if you just focus in on this, your objective is to take someone across the death bridge. QTT, boom, check. IBO 1, check. IBO 2, check. 20 points, check. Saturday training, check. ETT bonus, check. The more check marks, the more comma checks. Does that make sense? And so basically, here's what it boils down to. If you're not right now effective at getting results, focus on, it's really 5 things you got to have to be in place to become a 6-figure earner in ACN. Number 1, your integrity wheel. You got to make sure your personal life's conducive with your family so you can actually go out there and do ACN. If you have a spouse who doesn't let you do meetings, it's going to be hard to create an ETT factory. If you're going through a lot of issues, it'll be hard to be fired up to help someone go ETT. You're like, man, I can't help somebody until I can help myself. So we got to make sure you're right before you can be powerful leading people. Second thing is you got to make sure your skills are on point. Some of you guys right now, you know, you've been in ACN for a long time, but maybe your closing is lacking. Maybe your qualifications are lacking. And everything that you lack, guess what? Your team will lack because you are the lid of that team. So if you're bad at presenting, you can only duplicate presenters that are going to end up being bad. If you're not effective at closing people, guess what? You're going to duplicate ineffective closers. Your team will be only as good as you. Taking what Mr. Greg Provenzano said earlier as I wrap up, an organization, a great leader doesn't have an organization that's great because they're great. They have an organization that's great because they can be great without them. So being in Chicago and different marketplaces, here's what I realized with my Florida team. When I was there, we were crushing it. It's like, boom, on fire, in fuego. Go to sleep for like 3 months, come back, wow, on fire. But then I left. What happened? Right? Actually, we sustained. And yeah, we had our dip. We had transitions that happened. But we were able to sustain. That's why our numbers are still we're still on the charts, like top 2 every single month. And so what I learned, the 4 phases, check this out. Everyone knows about the 3 phases: create momentum, sustain momentum, advance momentum. You guys know that? Create, sustain, and then what? All right, here's what you call ninja trick number 2. Ready for this one? Create momentum, sustain momentum, independently sustained momentum, advance momentum. That's what I've been focused in on. And it came to me through an epiphany that I had with my mentor, my coach, who trained me. I never met my trainer, never did a meeting for me, but just through a phone call was able to sustain me to the point where I was able to have breakthrough in my business. I started thinking to myself, wow. So that means if that happened for me, that means technically I don't necessarily have to be in Florida to take the momentum to the next level. See, if I have an awareness of my goal is to sustain my momentum, even if I'm not there, that's what you call, now you start asking the right questions on how to empower a team of leaders. Does that make sense, guys? So we don't want to just create it. We don't just want to sustain it. We want to independently have our momentum, what? Sustained. And by having leaders who have all these characteristics, meaning their integrity is right, their skills are right, their understanding of process is right, their DMO's on point, and then you give them a strategy. Like we're in first quarter. The strategy right now needs to be massive phase 1. The strategy right now needs to be open up new lines. The strategy right now needs to be get your 50 core preferred customers. The strategy right now, ACN has put it in place because I guarantee that if you start applying what the company is saying as far as strategy goes, and you have these elements here, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to own 2015. There's no question about it. And so all the things that we talk about get built into your schedule. This is what your schedule should look like. Your schedule is dictated by the needs of your group. And so at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, a leader, in my opinion, is somebody who really is in the trenches, leading by example, one who knows the way, one who goes the way, and one who can then show the way. I'm so tired of seeing people just talk about it. It's great to be great, but you know what's greater? Someone who's going to take their shirt off to give it to one of their people. Someone who's going to get in the trenches and give it and help those people win. That's really what it's all about, and that's all people really care about at the end of the day. You know, Mr. John Maxwell says all the time, people don't care how much you know, they care how much you what? Yeah. And so we got to start shifting our mindset of what can we do to serve our people? What can we do to contribute to our new people? What can we do to demonstrate the type of leadership that Mr. Provenzano, Mr. Mike and Tony Kupis, Michael Caine, Mr. Stefanowski, how they represent leadership? That's what we need to start doing. And so if we begin to just put all these pieces together, understand that all you guys are leaders as it is. You guys are leaders. You guys are powerful. You guys are here not by chance, but by choice because you chose to do all the things that most people wouldn't do, and that's why you've made it into this inner circle, this elite right here of ACN. And where we're going as a company in the next 25, 35, 45, 55 years, when we begin to start opening up all the rest of Asia, all the rest of South America, as we begin to become a global dominant name, we already are, but I'm talking about on a whole nother level, not just in network marketing, but in business period, people will be talking about the movement that was created with ACN. People will talk about the entrepreneurs that came out of the ACN environment who went on not just to change their lives, but to change their lives with their family, their friends, their community. We don't realize this, but we're part of something so big and something so monumental that we have a responsibility, ladies and gentlemen, to really not just show up, but show up with a purpose, show up with a mission, show up ready to go out there and dominate and be the very best leaders possible, because if we don't do it, no one else will. It's our responsibility. You've been chosen, and that's why you're here. Does that make sense, guys? So we're going to take just 2 questions or 3 questions from the audience before we wrap it up. Do we have time for that? I think we do. Does anyone have any questions? If you have a question, you can come over here. I think we have a microphone. No questions? Really? Okay. Huh? You want to see the schedule one more time? Oh, they already changed it. Sorry. They took it off. 6:30, 8:30 PBRs, Monday through Friday. Have your time for your BOM, Tuesday night, whatever night you do your BOM. We do a leadership on Fridays. You don't have to. It's really up to you. But we basically have the PBR and launch. So launch is usually during the day, focusing on customers and qualifications, 20-point bonuses. So that's what we're focusing on during the day. Evening time, massive exposures, PBRs, group meetings, one-on-ones, whatever you want to go and do. And all that stuff just builds into the big event. So the big event is nothing more than a representation of all the work you did the last 48, 72 hours. That's all it is. So this is a cycle broken up. So the week is broken up in 2 parts. So right after Saturday training is when our week begins. So you guys are just finishing you guys end your week on Sunday. We begin our week Saturday after the training. Does that make sense? So we begin Saturday right after training. That's our new week, our new schedule. Then everything we do is Saturday, Sunday, Monday, boom, Tuesday. Then our week begins right after Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, boom, Saturday. And then it starts again. So we built our schedule. So we have 2 weeks within a 1 week. It's the mindset. Imagine this mindset, ladies and gentlemen. Do you guys remember what the end of the month used to be like for you guys? Do you remember your intensity the last day of the month? How you would be aggressively pushing to close apps? Aggressively to push qualifications. Do you guys remember that, yes or no? See, what if you had the end of the month every week? What if you had the end of the month mentality twice a week? What would happen with your momentum and your production? It's a shift. Question?
Is it on? Max, I just want to ask a question, and I already kind of know the answer, and I know you're going to go back to your why because I've watched your training on launching. But when you sit down with someone...
Say about your name first.
Sorry, my name is Greg Sewell.
Say hi, Greg.
Thank you, sir. When you're sitting down with them and you're going through their why, okay, and they're jacked up, they're excited, and they tell you all the yeses and all the things you want to hear, what do you do? What's your ninja trick for the next day or the third day when they all of a sudden start backsliding? I mean, I'll keep bringing the why up.
Very good question.
But I just want to know what you would do.
It's a skill. It's called walking them off the ledge. You guys know what I'm talking about? Walking them off the ledge. You know, I'm ready to end it right now, ACN suicide, right? Yeah. So the way I like to lock people in, ladies and gentlemen, so the key is speed, right? Speed. When things are so fast, people don't have time to think. They don't have time to think about quick because they're so see, it's whatever their attention's on. If they say that a person that has nothing going on is going to get in trouble. Does that make sense? If they're not thinking of something, they're up to what? Nothing. And when you're up to nothing, that's what you call the devil's playground. Does that make sense? See, but if you give someone to focus on something, their mind is occupied because they can only focus on one thing at a time. So if I launch them today, my goal is the next day is to have a meeting for them. The next day is to show them some type of result. So maybe what you just need to do is condense the time frame. Now, you can't control the fact that people are going to want to quit, but what you do is this. You can greatly increase your chances that they won't by walking them off the ledge based on what? Number one, getting them a result within 24 to 48 hours. That's your own goal, but anchor them 24, 48 hours. And let me explain what happens over time. If you bring the intensity at the very beginning, okay, great, I anchor them, I get a rep for a rep for a rep for a rep, start popping a bunch of ETTs, here's what you'll find. The more ETTs deep you go, the less likely people are going to quit because it creates a social proof, a bandwagon effect, because people know each other indirectly or directly because they're all within the circle of friends, and then now it becomes hard to quit because people never want to quit on friends. Like, all my friends are doing it, they're all ETTs, I'm not going to quit either. I learned that from this other company. We just recruited the number 2 earner in Chicago from a company called Way. Way, right? You know that company? Yeah. So none of them make any money, but they're all in for life for 5 years. And they're like, it's heartstrings. It's our heartstrings. We can't quit because it's heartstrings. Like, what do you mean? Like, all my very best friends are in ACN. All my very best friends are a part of my upline or my downline. I can't quit on them. So that's what happens over time, but your goal is to taproot fast, so you start building those the ETTs, and you're building it with their friends and their family, and if you do it enough times, it becomes almost like you're going to quit on the family? Does that make sense? So that's one tactic that we use. We work extremely fast.
Hi, Max. Laura
Hey.
Coombs.
Yep.
Hi, great. Nice to see you. When you're launching a brand new IBO, do you make calls with them to invite? If so, how many calls do you make? And then what's the ninja trick for getting
Is that my new ism, my ninja tricks? Max the ninja. Okay, cool. We'll take that.
more people at PBRs? What's the key to getting more people at PBRs?
A lot of leaders have different philosophies on this. When I launch brand new people, I already know like my goal is to guarantee a result for my new person, so I want to set them up to win. Now, some people say make 10 phone calls, make 3 phone calls. I just like to actually get them in the routine of doing, right? So I'll say when we make our list, say we're going to call the first 10 people because none are going to answer. At least 1 or 2 can answer. We got to call 10 to get 2 to answer. That way they already have the mind, okay, great, I'm going to call 10 people. And in those 10 phone calls, they're taking action 10 times. They're getting uncomfortable 10 times. They get a phone, they answer, and they're going to have somebody answer the phone, so then they're going to get some yeses guaranteed. The goal is to get them 1, 2, 3 yeses, but if you already get them in motion of making 10 phone calls, motion creates emotion. They're going to create that momentum of taking more action, making more phone calls. So that's all your goal really is, get them in action right away. Does that make sense? And then how to pack out PBRs, I'll be straight up with you. Like if I launch somebody today, I don't expect them to have a PBR tomorrow with like 100 people. It's not going to happen. But here's what I know about everybody in this room. How many of you guys, when you recruited in one ETT, your first rep or two was one of your closest friends or closest family members? I learned this from the Dowds. They're called my faves, right? Everybody, when they go ETT, recruits their closest friend or family member. It's called your circle of influence first. So I'm not trying to recruit the person they haven't spoken to in 10 years. It'd be great to get them, but I know if in 24 hours I'm trying to get a result, my chances are greater if I would go after their closest family and friends. Because 85% of the people in the room here, leaders who hit ATT, did it with family and friends. Does that make sense, guys? Last question.
Hello, Max. My name is Jerome Lancaster from London.
Whoa, hold on. Slide that one more time.
My name is Jerome Lancaster from London. You said about building momentum, would you work with all 3 of their legs to build a momentum or just 2?
I just work in the beginning. I just make a mess. Just make a mess. This is where I'm going to work. So your goal is to create a mess. Just a mess everywhere. You don't say, well, you look sharp, you're a leader. Oh, you have influence, you're a leader. No. Don't tell me, show me. Everything has to be proven with what results. You can't determine where you're going to live in a leg until like maybe 30 days, 60 days. I recruited my one guy in Chicago, and at the very beginning, I was like, this guy's going to go TC in a day. Still an ETT, right? Does that make sense? But he served a purpose, helped me create my momentum. 56 reps later, we found 2, 3 ETLs in that organization, and then that did what? Spark momentum in this other organization. Now we're like over here blowing it up. So I let the momentum dictate where I live, and while I'm living there, my goal is not just to produce, but to build production and build what? Leaders. Does that make sense? Awesome, guys. I hope this really helped you guys out. Let's make this weekend the best weekend ever.